In Chapter 14, Gatria had seen nothing but barren land for days. And in that dead land, monsters roamed free, preying on the people traveling on foot, stopping many citizens of the kingdom of Tretera from the neighboring towns and villages who wanted to leave the kingdom to seek fertile land and survive. They were desperate and starving. The kingdom of Tretera had forsaken them and they wanted to escape but couldn't, forever trapped in that hellish land. As days passed of Gatria flying over the barren land on Drago's back, she felt weak. After she healed Drago, her essence had lessened quite significantly, and a dead land meant no essence to absorb for her. It was the same as being abandoned by her deity. It was horrifying to not feel any essence of nature around her. It made her think of Solal. She had been imprisoned underneath the Faberian kingdom with no essence of flame near her, unlike herself, who could still feel the essence of nature underneath the hallowed valley. Gatria couldn't imagine the pain and torture Solal must have experienced, not feeling the essence of Azatura, not feeling the essence of life. Gatria felt like she was slowly suffocating. "Are you okay, Gatria?" It was Drago's voice in her head. He could sense how tense Gatria had gotten since they left the cave after he was healed. "I'm okay." Gatria made her voice firm, but she was not fooling Drago. "Should we land and rest?" No, Gatria quickly responded. "If you're still not tired, let's continue. The barren land makes me feel uncomfortable. We still have one more day before we reach Sarn. Hang in there, Your Highness." "It's Gatria, Drago." Drago did not respond and just continued flying with a speed that was safe for Gatria, who seemed on edge as they traversed the barren land. With a dragon's vitality, Drago continued flying without rest and reached Sarna just before the sun set the next day. Sarna was the nearest town to the kingdom of Tretera. According to Hakarin in the last meeting, it was one of the remaining towns near the city of Ager that was still fertile. But the information given by Hakarin to Gatria was not what she was seeing now. Sarna was not fertile. The barren land had already consumed the once bustling town. Gatria could only stare at the town's gate as she and Drago landed. Forget a bustling town, they could only see few people walking around and still trying to make a living in this dead land. Hakarin said Sarna is a fertile land, Gatria whispered in disbelief. "Something must have happened," responded Drago. Gatria could guess what had happened. She escaped her prison and the barren land worsened. And without her blood to sustain the kingdom of Tretera, there was nothing they could do but accept their fate. "The city of Ager is still fertile, right?" Gatria asked as she walked side by side with Drago to the town's gate. "Yes, I believe so. They must have used all my remaining blood in there," Gatria assumed. "The royal family and most noble lives in the capital, they must be trying to save themselves. Selfish bastards." Drago flinched when he heard Gatria swore. She must be really mad. "Should we stay here or should we continue traveling?" Drago asked when they finally entered the town. Gatria turned to Drago before saying, "You've been flying for days, you need to rest. Let's stay for the night and leave early tomorrow." "All right." "Let me ask around if they still have running inns here." Gatria nodded at Drago, and as he left her to ask, Gatria crouched down to touch the soil. She tried imbuing the soil with essence, but the result was the same, nothing. The only option was to bleed for Azatura, but that would take a lot of time and she didn't have time to spare at the moment. Even if she would drain her blood dry every day and feed it to the dead soil, it would take her decades to breathe life to the barren land. And that would only be revitalizing the soil. Gatria crushed the dirt in between her fingers before standing up. "I have to figure out how to stop the barren land from spreading first, or it'll be a disaster." Gatria had something in mind, but her vitality would be damaged if she tried using that method. Gatria? It was Drago's voice, and the urgency in his tone made Gatria turn around, just in time to see a large hammer striking down on her. Her eyes widened and her lips parted in surprise. She was too preoccupied and weak to feel Car's presence. She might be quick, but it was already too late to escape, and Trevin was not with her. She only had one option. Using her essence, she created vines and quickly cocooned herself inside to shield herself from the deadly attack that was coming down on her. Gatria braced herself at the impact. A loud sound echoed throughout the whole town, and the ground shook at the impact as the hammer struck down on the vines. Gatria coughed up blood inside at the strong impact, but her vines did not receive any damage. So strong. Or maybe I'm just weak after traversing the barren land. Whatever the reason was, Gatria knew she was at a disadvantage. The hammer did not only strike once. It struck Gatria's vines multiple times, unable to damage it, but the mistress of nature inside was coughing up more blood. I can't let this continue. Gatria gritted her teeth and used her essence to change the shape of the vines. From a cocoon shape to a thick square shield tightly held by her hand. Meanwhile, she summoned her sword on her free hand while bracing for the next strike of the hammer. That's when Drago appeared in front of her and blocked the hammer with his hand. Drago, Gatria was planning to tell Drago not to intervene since this was her fight, but Drago's words stopped her mouth from opening to speak. What the fuck is wrong with you, Cardrew? Drago gripped the hammer and it started to crack from the force of Drago's hand. Car tried to withdraw his hammer, but Drago tightened his hold on it while closely observing the warlord who had an emotionless expression and movement, as if he was a doll without consciousness. Something is wrong with Car, Drago thought. He was about to inform Gatria who's behind him, but before he could relay his observation to Gatria, he felt her grip his shoulder and used him to launch herself into the air, upside down. And in midair, Gatria agilely twisted her body and landed a brutal kick on the side of Car's head, which made the warlord stagger back, loosening his hold on his hammer. Drago was speechless. Seeing the fury on Gatria's face, he realized the depths of Gatria's resentment. He could feel it. This kind of fury, this kind of rage. This was not something that could be erased by the phrase "I'm sorry." He thought reconciliation was possible between the two, but seeing Gatria now, he didn't think so anymore. In the state Gatria was in now, she would never forgive Car. She would never reconcile with him, and her heart would remain broken and filled with anger and resentment. Car's betrayal scarred Gatria to the point that her resentment couldn't be easily appeased. It was already a miracle that she reconsidered not hurting the good apples in the barrel. Drago, this is my battle, don't intervene. Gatria's cold, emotionless voice pulled Drago from his thoughts and stared at Gatria's back, who just landed on the ground in between him and Car, who finally got his bearing. Gatria and Drago could feel Car's murderous intent as he held his hammer tightly. Car's sharp and cold, emotionless eyes were narrowed on Gatria. Drago, move. Drago was worried, but he respected Gatria's decision and moved to the side. Gatria's eyes were cold and merciless as she stared at Car. She couldn't feel anything but anger. Her blood of Nadir was responding to her rage. It was boiling and ready to do its master's bidding. Gripping her sword, Gatria took the first move and pushed herself toward Car with her foot. Her sword slash was easily blocked by Car's hammer, but that did not deter Gatria. She hacked and slashed with a speed that a normal person could never follow. However, Car was not a normal person. He could easily block Gatria's attacks, but Gatria's sword was leaving cuts on his steel hammer. Drago, who was watching on the sideline, could hear the small number of people remaining in Sarnau, panicking and running to safety, but he couldn't take his eyes off Gatria. Those sword attacks were brutal and were meant to kill. Drago could see a dark green mist leaking out of the sword, as if her sword was responding to her anger. With his sensitive sense of smell, he could pick up poison from that mist. She really meant to kill him, Drago thought as he watched Gatria attack Kar mercilessly, non-stop. Kar could parry Gatria's every attack, but he was being pushed back and couldn't return her strikes. And as if her sword was not enough for her, she started mixing her murderous sword attacks with violent kicks that pushed the warlord back at every strike, while the hammer continued making cracking sounds as it broke from Gatria's attacks. Drago clenched his fist in worry when he saw Kar using the pulling ability of his hammer, but he could see Gatria smirking as if she had waited for Kar to use it. And Drago realized the reason why a few moments later. Gatria used the pulling pressure of Kar's hammer to get close to Kar, but before she could be fully pulled in, she twisted her body upside down, and from midair, Gatria summoned another sword from her other hand and sent 2 slashes of sharp, condensed essence that fully broke Kar's hammer. When the hammer broke, Gatria's attack couldn't be parried anymore. Her swords became soaked in Kar's blood, and the poison on her swords had seeped into Kar's body, making Kar's movements dull. Seeing Kar struggling, it brought a smile on Gatria's lips, and her movements became even more ruthless. She slashed, stabbed, and hacked. There was no elegance in her movement as the murderous aura she exuded continued getting stronger, which made even the hand of a dragon like Drago tremble. It was such a terrible feeling. It was suffocating. Even Drago, who was considered the strongest dragon of the dragon race, felt like his senses were being overrode by fear that he wanted to kneel and surrender. He was at the sideline at that, and aura was not even meant for him. Drago had to clench his hands a couple of times to get control of himself, to not let the fear consume him. Then he looked at Kar. Kar was full of deep cuts. He was poisoned, and he was coughing up blood due to Gatria's intense aura. Kar tried to use his strength to stop her movements, but the strength of the beings blessed by deities could not be suppressed without a moonlight stone. He's going to die. Just as Drago had thought of that, Gatria's cloak started glowing, making Gatria stop her attacks and look at her cloak with a surprised expression. A moonlight stone. Gatria immediately checked her surroundings, but there was no one who looked suspicious. She narrowed her eyes on Kar. Does he have it? No, if he did have one, she would have felt it the moment Kar attacked her. Is it someone else, and whoever they are, they just suddenly appeared with the moonlight stone. Gatria's sharp gaze roamed the whole area again. I can't waste a cloak. I haven't even reached Ager yet. With what she had planned, she would need her cloak to not be weakened by the moonlight stone immediately. Gritting her teeth because she couldn't finish Kar, she ran toward Drago, grabbed his hand, and ordered him to drag her away while running agitatedly. Drago, fly! Seeing Gatria tensed, without question, Drago picked up Gatria in his arms and lunged himself up. Midair, he morphed into his dragon form and quickly flew away from Sarnau. What happened? Drago asked in Gatria's head after putting a great distance between them and Sarnau. I felt something weird, Gatria responded while checking her cloak. It was still intact and only absorbed a little amount of moonlight stone. I didn't feel anything. Drago's voice in her head pulled her out of her thoughts. As much as she was grateful that Drago was helping her, she could never fully trust anyone with her weakness. I felt danger coming. Agatria's answer made Drago feel doubt. With her murderous intent, Drago was certain that if she didn't run and drag him away, she would have killed Carr. It was either she didn't want to kill Carr or she really did feel danger, the kind of danger only she could feel. Because he, a dragon sensitive to people's aura and essence, didn't feel anything, she's hiding something. That what was on Drago's mind as he flew toward the city of Ager, the capital of the kingdom of Tretera. Back in Sarnau, just after Drago and Gatria flew away, a woman clad in black cloak appeared beside Carr. Her black eyes with a hint of bluish hue looked down at the bloodied and dying warlord. It was not the wound from the mistress of nature, but from the poison. Moving in uninterested manner, she took out a fancy bottle and poured the content on Carr's poisoned flesh. In just a few breaths, the poison disappeared. The woman smirked before throwing the bottle, uncaring where it landed or if it broke. At least that useless overseer's blood is useful. That's right. The content of the blood the woman poured on Carr's poisoned wound was Gatria's blood. If only Grand Commander didn't order me to just observe, I would have killed that useless wench and not just used the moonlight stone. The woman, Iamissa, clicked her tongue, but that wench is fast. She immediately noticed the moonlight stone. Well, it couldn't be helped. And that bastard dragon is with her. Ruraris will surely be seething with jealousy. Ruraris was one of the 4 Imperials, and she had been in love with that bastard dragon for so long. If Ruraris knew about that wench, Ruraris would surely kill her. Iamissa's smirk widened. Yeah, let's tell her. She'll kill the wench, and I wouldn't be punished by the Grand Commander. She giggled as she dragged Carr's body toward to Jerk, who was hiding in one of the houses in Sarnau. What a perfect plan, I'm really brilliant. Excited to execute her plan, she hurriedly went to Jerk's house. He was defeated. Jerk sounded surprised when he saw the unconscious and bleeding Carr. Iamissa let out a mocking laugh. You're shocked? Didn't you lose to them before? Why are you hoping for a different result now? Be thankful this warlord still have a use for us, or else I would have left him to die. Jerk's face hardened. But we trained and honed our skills for few centuries. Carr is one of our race's strongest warrior. Iamissa rolled her eyes. That may be, but do you really think a dull warrior who couldn't think for himself could fight against one of those wenches? I suggest you start showing your worth because the Grand Commander doesn't like weak subordinates. If you really want to have a spot in our side and get your revenge, use your head properly and don't use a lifeless soldier. Iamissa lightly kicked Carr's unconscious body to convey that the lifeless soldier she was talking about was the warlord. Jerk's face darkened, but he couldn't talk back to Iamissa. He had assessed her strength. He could never defeat her. Wasn't that the reason why they aligned themselves with the Grand Commander? The 4 Imperials' strength could rival, no, could defeat the Queens of Ither. That's why he needed the Grand Commander's approval. For the sake of our revenge, we will do anything, thus Jerk bowed. Please tell the Grand Commander to give us one more chance. We will prove ourselves. Iamissa nodded, clearly pleased by the change in Jerk's tone. I will tell the Grand Commander, but you should hurry up and prove your worth to us. After saying that, Iamissa left while an excited grin crept into her lips as she contacted Ruraris. Meanwhile, back at the rundown house Jerk was hiding in with Carr, Jerk steeled himself and decided to risk it all to prove themselves once and for all. And the place where they would prove themselves was in a drow. According to the information he had gathered, the 2 queens who had escaped their prison had left a drow together with those traitorous descendants of Saphir. It was the perfect time to conquer a drow and show them the might of the descendant of Saphir and teach those traitors. Unbeknownst to the citizens of a drow, a battle would soon begin. And this time, there would be no other queens to protect them. As DCLIBCC.